we've made the commitment to create an environment where ambitious fundraisers can really thrive and grow and develop, and know that their well-being is a priority for everybody within the directorate and indeed the wider organisation, and critically that this priority will be taken incredibly seriously.
Great question to talk to your team about. When have you felt that you belonged most strongly in this organisation? Why was that? What are the barriers to feeling like you belong?
To just focus on a protected characteristic like race, yes, technically you achieve diversity, but actually I might not have the access issues that someone else might have.
So my conclusion is actually we can't do it all. So what can we do to run really effective small organisations and to enjoy ourselves in the process?
Fundraising everywhere.
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 Fundraising everywhere. You need to add me in there.
Hello, my friends. How are you? You are very welcome. Good afternoon to you, or good morning, or good evening, at whatever time you're watching this. Who am I to presume? Who am I? Indeed, my name is Simon. I am one of the co-founders of Fundraising Everywhere. I am very delighted to be your host today. Merely here to introduce our guest today, but I'll also be back on for some Q&A. But I just wanted to pop up, first of all, to say hello and thank yous. But also, I'm going to just talk you through a bit of housekeeping for those of you who have never been to a Fundraising Everywhere event, perhaps. I'll talk you through how the day works. But first of all, thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time out of your busy days to watch this. Thank you for registering. And thank you, of course, to our speakers for making time to share and being so open with what they're going to share. I want to say hello to the people who are with us. So first of all, do try out the chat box. So you'll see the chat box, you pick a username, jump in there, say hello. I can already see a bunch of people saying hello, so that's good. Hello to Sam, of course. Hello to Ryan and Alison and Maddie, Ali, Becky. We've got lots of people. I saw Diana from Stratcom, our friends at Stratcom. Hello. Pandora, hello, Katie. Great, the chat box is working. So do keep on dropping your comments in there, say hello in there, let us know where you're tuning in from. And throughout the webinar, please do feel free to pop questions in there. I will be keeping an eye on them, as will our speakers. As I said, I'll be jumping on at the end to throw those questions at them. If you don't get a chance to get your question answered, or you do kind of start to think about this, or you're watching this back on demand and want to unpack any of it more, I know our speakers will be very happy if you reach out to them, and you will see at the bottom at the top left, top right of the page, where you can book a free meeting, a free consultation with our friends at Beautiful Insights. And I have always found them, you may have seen them speak with us before. They were on our podcast recently. They've been on our events before, and just found them so open and so easy to deal with, and just so really understanding of, of the reality of what charities are going through. So I'm really looking forward to our topic today, where we're going to be diving into measuring supporter engagement and really looking at a case study of how our friends at Starlight Foundation have implemented that alongside Beautiful Insights. And this is really good timing coming off the back of our supporter experience conference a couple months ago. I know measuring supporter experience came up a lot in that, and I find it a really interesting subject. So I'm really looking forward to this. If you're a member, remember you can go back and watch our supporter experience conference. And I do want to say a special hello to the Fundraising Everywhere members. Hello, and thank you for being here. Thank you so much for being part of what we do, and for enabling us to do everything, and for guiding us to get in the content that you need to do your job. So thank you for that. If you're not a member, we have an offer where you can get your first month's trial free. You can cancel your membership with Fundraising Everywhere at any time, but you can try that out. There's a button below the video there if you want to try that 3-month Fundraising Everywhere. Come on board. We hope you'll stay with us. You'll see we've got some great events coming up around individual giving, around trusts and major donors, around our events fundraising. We run stuff all year long. We run stuff specifically for members that you have to be a member to access, and we have our conferences throughout the year. We also have workshops and networking events throughout the year. So there's lots to sign up for there. If you don't know about Fundraising Everywhere membership, please do just take a moment to click there and do try us out. You can do that at any stage. The other bits of housekeeping I want to say, there is a copy of the slides there. You can see a copy there. You will see a link to get in touch with Beautiful Insights, because I know you're going to have some answers afterwards. And just a reminder that the recording will be available at the same link for 30 days with your registration. You can come back and watch this for the next 30 days. And members, you'll get ongoing access to this. Remember, this just falls into the Fundraising Everywhere members library, and you can continue to watch it ad nauseum. No, you can continue to watch it as and when you need it. So that is all there for you. I think that's all I've got in the housekeeping. I will be back for the Q&A. Just a reminder as well, at the end, you can get a certificate of completion. There's also a button underneath the video. Fill that out and we'll send you your little email certificate of completion to do that. But yes, please do keep those questions coming in. And there's nothing else for me to do except to introduce our wonderful guests. So today, let me get up. I'm getting up the job titles because I know I have a tendency to get this wrong. But we've got the managing director, Stephen Dodds of Beautiful Insights, and the founder, Paul Seabrook of Beautiful Insights. And I can spot another founder because they also have gray hair. And then we have Joan Middleton, who's joining us from the Starlight Foundation. And we are big fans of the Starlight Foundation at Fundraising Everywhere, all about bringing play into child's hospitals and hospice care. And it's really interesting. You know how we feel about play and fundraising everywhere. So yes, let's bring on our guests. Let's please have Stephen, Paul, and Joan. Hello, my friends. Welcome.
Hello there. I'm glad you made that joke about grey hair, not me, Simon.
Yeah, I know you're not allowed to. I mean, Paul, Stephen emailed me that joke asking me. Thank you all so much for joining us. It's so lovely to see you. And I got an opportunity to chat to you on the Fundraising Everywhere podcast recently. But I'm not going to waste any more time. I'm going to hand it over to you, if I may, and I'll be back on to throw questions at you. But thank you.
Great. Thank you. Thanks, Simon. Yeah, thanks ever so much for that lovely intro, Simon, and to everybody for coming today. I really appreciate you taking some time. Yeah, I'm Stephen, Managing Director of Beautiful Insights. Paul, do you want to say hello? Yeah. Oh, you're on mute. Try again. Oh, this happened last time. Joan, why don't you say hello?
Hi.
That's
hopefully
working.
That's working.
Yeah. We'll come back to Paul.
That's not.
We'll come back to Paul. Listen, we're really excited to be here and share our perspectives on, if you like, measuring supporter experience, and most importantly, the experiences of Starlight of using this data. We love to see kind of research in action. We don't always get to see the kind of impact of our kind of research activities. So we're really pleased to be able to present with Joan today. And thank you ever so much, Joan, for everything you're doing on this webinar. Paul.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can. Say hello quickly. He's back.
Hello again. That happened last time. I pressed the wrong button. It's part of getting old, isn't it, Simon?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. Thank you for taking the time to see us today. And feel free to ping your questions as we go. It'd be great to get some feedback.
Thank you. So we know, as I'm sure you will do listening to this, that fewer people are giving to charity, and those that do are becoming more important. So we believe, if you like, that more tools are needed to help charities and to help fundraisers, people like yourself, sort of deliver the experiences that keep people giving, essentially. So the SAFE Index, SAFE stands for Satisfaction and Future Engagement. It's essentially our benchmarking tool to help fundraisers kind of measure how people feel about being a supporter of your charity, if you like, the supporter experience, and how that translates, what impact that has on their likelihood to keep giving to you in future. Essentially, it's to what extent, is your supporter experience creating commitment amongst your donors, which is obviously such an important kind of matter. This presentation wouldn't be possible without the organisations that have participated in the SAFE Index so far. Thanks very much to them. So we piloted the project last summer with donors to the universities that you see on the slide here, and then we launched it in the spring of this year. And since then, we've had the charities that you see on the slide here participate. Organisations of different sizes from different sectors, and I guess different sort of maturities in their kind of supporter experience kind of journey, and that's reflected in some of the scores that we'll share. So what are we gonna cover? Well, some highlights really from the SAFE Index, and particularly focusing on Starlight's scores, and the reason, if you like, why we've called them top of the pops, champions, superstars in kind of supporter experience and supporter communication terms. Joan and Starlight's activities is the star of the show today, and we'll be taking you through kind of what her approach, Starlight's approach to supporter experience, and kind of support, helping you understand, hopefully, why those communications and that experience have been rated so highly. And then we'll try and wrap up with some kind of takeaways and things to think about. As you say, do get your questions in. We'll have time at the end if we don't cover them as we go. Just a little bit on the SAFE Index then, before we share some scores. As I said, it was sort of developed to shine a light, I suppose, on the invisible metrics of the supporter experience, the kind of both the inputs and the outputs, those things that can't really be seen by looking at the behavioural data that fundraisers typically have at their disposal, clicks and donations and so on. So it's a supporter survey. It's a common survey to all charities that take part, and it provides sort of measures and benchmarks on those aspects that you see on the screen there. All the charities that participate are asked to pull the same data selections and essentially to send the survey to the same sort of group of supporters, essentially any donor that has donated in the last 5 years. So we're able to compare apples with apples when we're looking at the results. And what we've got is measures on what you call the sort of component parts of the supporter experience. So the kind of motivations, touch points, and the supporters' views of communications, the bits that sort of fundraisers control essentially, or try and use, and also the effects of that supporter experience. So the things that sort of fundraisers want to achieve, which is satisfaction, an emotional reward, share of wallet, and kind of future intention or future engagement, the sort of commitment to keep donating. And we sort of wanted to, we believe in this principle of what gets measured gets managed, and putting numbers and comparisons on these aspects acts essentially as motivations for fundraisers to improve them. And also the numbers and comparisons obviously show how these scores can be improved. Clients are also telling us that have participated in the SAFE Index that The numbers can also help fundraisers kind of win arguments internally, especially around kind of getting more resources, more budget, or kind of changing, introducing new initiatives that can improve the supporter experience because they've got the data that says that those improvements are needed. We've also run the analysis across the whole data set of response that we've had so far, and we can see that high scores on these measures that you see on the screen, particularly around motivation, the communication reward, and the emotional effect, correlates very strongly with, if you like, a high motivation to keep giving. In fact, donors that give charities high scores on these measures are more than 3 times more likely to say they're going to keep donating, and more than 3 times more likely to say that they've put that charity in their will. So what you'll see on the slides from the SAFE Index are Starlight's result in pink there. Those are some of the other charities that have participated so far, including specifically the lowest sort of scoring charity, and the average in grey there, the kind of the mean. Yeah, and the reason why we're here is that of the charities that have participated so far, that Starlight have sort of topped the index. So this index is a composite score of what we consider to be, if you like, critical parts of the survey and the key parts of the supporter experience. So particularly how effective the communications are, and that's rated by the supporters. What is the emotional impact of those communications, and sort of being how a donor's feeling, if you like, for being a supporter, and what is their future intention? What proportions say that they're very committed to keep donating? So you can see that the maximum score would be 100, and you can see that Starlight is top, just, but nonetheless, there they are. They're around 18% above the mean score that we've seen so far, and they're more than 50% higher than the lowest scoring charity. So what does this show? Well, it shows that Starlight obviously doing something right. It also shows that, if you like, the strength and the effectiveness of the supporter experience does vary across charities. And we know from working with these charities that they are, as I said, on different points in their supporter development journey. Some are more mature and others less so. But I think also the implication here is that the supporter experience can be improved, that as fundraisers we can do things that improve supporters' perceptions of us, and improve that kind of that commitment to keep donating, as Starlight have done and continue to do. Another interesting measure we thought we'd share is the response rate to the survey. It's actually a brilliant measure ultimately of how engaged your supporters are. When asked to give their views, what proportion of the supporter base could be bothered to kind of give a perspective. Big variation on the response rates, as you can see. Starlight pushing twice as far ahead as the mean and some of those other charities that participated. It's worth remembering, of course, that those that respond are sort of by definition likely to be one's more engaged supporters. If you could get all your donors to respond to a survey like this, the results that we're going to see would obviously be significantly lower. Finally, just before I hand over to Joan to give her sort of perspective, some of the measures that we look at, one of the key measures that we look at in the SAFE Index are essentially the reward that is generated by the supporter experience, and particularly the communications that they receive. Those are some of the key things that fundraisers can control, can improve, and contribute quite significantly to the overall supporter experience. So the scores here show the percentage that are agreeing with each of those statements across Starlight and obviously all the different charities that have participated. So it was a 5-point scale from strongly agree through to strongly disagree, and the scores there show strongly agree plus somewhat agree. So again, Starlight are between 20 to 60% ahead of the lowest place, depending on the measure, and between about 10 and 25% ahead of the mean, again depending on the measure. Starlight supporters essentially rated the charity. It sort of gave the charity a top score from a kind of satisfaction point of view, from claiming that they're seeing the difference that their support is making, feeling proud to support them, and making it clear what needs, what the supporter can do if they want to support the charity more. Interestingly, the lowest average score here, which essentially that area perhaps where the sector can improve most on, is that measure compelling comms. So the second statement from the bottom, they have compelling communications which motivate me to support them. Overall, we had a 64%, the mean is 64% amongst all the charities that have participated, agreeing with that. It also happens to be the score that Starlight are both furthest ahead from the average and the lowest score. So that is the area that, if you like, the sector perhaps needs to work more significantly at. But it's also an area that Starlight appear to be kind of getting right as it stands. So yeah, huge congrats to Joan and to the rest of the team for that, and I hope that you can give some perspective now, Joan, on what you've done to deserve that. And I know you've been very modest and very kind of surprised, genuinely surprised that you got the score. Over to you, Joan.
Thanks. I think it was, we were surprised that we came as high as we did. I think I'm very passionate about compelling comms. I think, having worked across various marketing functions over the last 25 years, it's quite hard to make me care about things, and so it's quite foundational for me to make comms that actually matter to people, and so I think that's kind of the foundation maybe of why this seems to be working. So it's been quite nice to have that, some validation of that is working for us. Obviously there's still room for growth, and I always pick holes in everything that we do, so there's always room for, I always think that there is much more room for improvement, but it is really important for, just thinking about how people are reading your what you're sending them, what do you want them to feel, how are you making them feel that, and I think there's something around setting expectations in the beginning. There's a lot that we'll go into kind of in the slides ahead, but I think it's really important to set some expectations when you are starting a journey with people, but again realizing that they, and I think it was a point that we made on the podcast, that they don't know that they're necessarily on a journey. So the foundation of that is, what are you trying to make people feel? And then going from there, using that as a foundation. I think sometimes it can be really hard to. This is one of my favorite quotes, which is Maya Angelou. People will always remember how you made them feel, and sometimes it can be really hard to create for. We've got loads of segments and loads of different comms that are going out to different audiences, and it can be really hard to personalize those to a level that is individual to everyone. Obviously, we'd love to personalize and make things as individual as we can, but I think ultimately we're quite a small charity. We don't always have the time to do that. So I find what's more useful is actually working from a place of how you're actually making people feel, and what are the motivations of the group that you're trying to speak to, because that kind of tends to cut through of your variances. I'm not a zero inbox person, as everyone knows, but then there's also people that are zero inbox people. So people have very different behaviors in how they are reading your comms and your journeys. And so, can we make them feel something, and how are we making them do that? I think is kind of the really key starting point for me when thinking about our audiences. If you want to go to the next slide. So I think sometimes it's really important to realize that we often, and we've been very guilty of this in the past, of speaking to people as almost like a broadcast. We have just recently moved from using a lot of this information. We've moved from doing one joint email newsletter to people and splitting that out into our professional audiences, our cold audiences, and our warm audiences, just to keep it it's very broad audiences, but it's better than having everybody that was just getting one blanket broadcast audience. And this quote from David Ogilvy, for those who don't know, he's a really famous advertising copywriter, and he always has some really interesting perspectives on things. And I think this is really valuable advice of really thinking about when you're writing to people, write to one person, not just in your blanket comms, way of speaking to people. That can be appropriate, and always think about, I always try and think about the context and the purpose of what it is that you're trying to communicate. But it's really important that, I just think there's such a sea of sameness out there in terms of, particularly with marketing jargon, and, we can be very guilty of that. And for certain audiences, for example, we have for our professional audiences, we speak about delivering play resources. But if we are speaking to our youth panel, for example, or to our supporters, delivering play resources makes us sound like Uber drivers, and actually, or Deliveroo, and actually it's more about bringing toys to children in hospital, or it's not the same thing. So it's really important to have sort of anchoring language and things that we're you speaking to people in a way that's the way that they would communicate, and that the way that they'd want to hear from you. Do you want to go to the next slide? So just this was a slide that we included. And maybe we go on to the next slide. This was the copy that was for the open rates. And so we've just included that here. I think we felt that it, might be useful for people to see the difference that we put into the email, using our own language and our own way of speaking to our supporters, which maybe was the difference in the open rates. Just making the time to really think about a lot of our supporters. It's about the time, and I think it's just, I always think about, would I do this? Would I open this email? Would I care? Why would I care about this? And then try and bring that into the comms that you are making. I don't know if that makes sense. So yeah, I think we've at Starlight have been on a journey in terms of our language and our brand language, in that we have over the last few years we have changed our mission, and so we have moved more from wish granting into play for children in hospitals. And what's really important for us now is building consistent messaging so that we can build that trust with people, because when you're taking people on a journey from that level of change, it's really important that you have consistent comms across all your different channels. And for me, particularly in a digital context, I think digital is the space where it's easiest to break trust, but also it's most important to build it. And so we've been really working really hard of having consistent comms and building up the alignment of messaging across all of our different areas of communications. So whether that's policy, whether that's professionals, health play specialists, and our supporters, particularly, of them understanding and getting a consistent message from us about what it is that we're doing, how they support is really having an impact. And then I also always think that it's really important to add a little bit of surprise and delight into all of our comms. So yeah, and I think what's really important and what often gets missed in consistency is also consistency across the team. So this is a shout out to our whole team, because it's not just this is not just me doing this work. I'm speaking on behalf of everyone. And there's a lot of really hard work that goes on in the background, particularly within the data teams of we've done some really good work with Beautiful Insights on audience. And so our data team are really good at, constantly looking back at that audience research and making sure that we are being consistent and that we are, that we are building that trust. So shout out to our great team. So this is just a quick slide to show kind of our previous logo and how we've actually moved our brand across from being a wish granting charity to being more play focused, and then from that into being more trauma reduction focused with with understanding that play is the solution rather than the focus of what it is that we're doing. We've done some really helpful brand work with another agency to help us get really some brand language and positioning language, which has been really helpful for us to have anchoring in our which helps with the consistency and the tone of our comms, so that we are able to all be singing, essentially from the same hymn sheet. I think it's really key to have some anchoring language for each language, for each audience. So for example, what I was saying before about having, delivering play resources versus, bringing play and joy to children in hospital, there's very different tone and language, but it's still part of our bright-hearted trailblazing foundation of our brand. Sorry. So I think, what does this look like in terms of the safe indexes that we've been looking at? We've had a lot of evidence ranking caring at the top of our for our audiences as being a massive motivator. But for example, for our regular giving, that they had a higher ranking of useful. And so what does that actually mean for our messaging? What does that mean for how we're communicating with them in the future? So these are the sort of things that we're now looking at. So this is just an example I thought I'd put in here of our new newsletter, which is split into, which seems very obvious, and doing it into different audiences. It takes some extra work, which which can be problematic for, as I said, we are quite a small charity and we are quite limited in terms of resources, but it is really important for us to have that split out, as opposed to sending everyone just a blanket email. And so that's just an example of how we are changing the tone and the language for each of our different audiences. I also thought it's always useful to have one that doesn't work and that doesn't go so well. So this was before we had the brand language, and we were trying various different levels of how playful we should be, or how serious we should be. And this was one that was really interesting because I got a lot of compliments from external suppliers, from 3 copywriters, to it was an email that we sent out on Talk Like a Pirate Day to generate some extra additional income on our Play Store. And it did not work for our supporters at all in terms of conversion. But again, like I said, everyone thought that it was great from a creative point of view. So that was a really interesting learning for us of the importance of not going too far the other way, of being too playful. And I think there's always it's really important just to have that anchoring language, saying to everything more now.
Joan, do you want to say a little bit more about bright-hearted trailblazer, or blazing, and the kind of the role of that and what that means for you?
So that's central to our brand now, and I think that's been really helpful for us to kind of anchor all of our language around that. So whenever anybody is now doing some comms, we can go, is this representative of us being a bright-hearted trailblazer? I think it's that is our foundational language that we can use, and it's given us. We've also got some other boilerplate copy that comes out of that, but tonally it's really helpful to just use that as a personality to and if you look at this pirate email particularly, that is not bright-hearted trailblazer. That's that's being way too fun. I think the trailblazer part of it positions us as experts and as pioneers, and bright-hearted allows for some playfulness, but it's not that level of play, if that makes sense. So yeah.
Thank you. Shall I click the next slide?
Yep. Let's go for the next one.
Oh yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about the going back to the SAFE index. What's been really useful for us is having some really actionable metrics. It's given us headroom around our product diversification, where there's some gaps, particularly around legacy. Knowing where we rank has been really helpful, just as a kind of an internal boost to know that we are on the right path, I guess. And yeah, as Stephen was saying in the beginning, it's helpful to have that evidence, for additional funding and for that we've got proof that investing in this area does actually bring in, is more likely to make for more money coming in, basically. I think what's been interesting also is there's some gaps not gaps, but there's some differences in some of the various segments, which, in terms of their motivations, which is obvious, but it's also a good reminder. And it's always good, again, it's a good anchoring point to come back to. For example, our community and newer fundraisers have very different motivations to our longer term audience. So I think it's been really helpful to reinforce our insights with our audience research, and it's been really, really helpful. I think what I've really found most useful is the more human nuance that is missed with most other data metrics. Like we have open rates and we have unsubscribe rates and all of these things, but actually what's really useful is that people aren't really linear logic models. This data is much more useful in terms of motivations and building emotion. So I think that's me.
Thanks, Joan. Yeah.
Just checking you can still hear me okay.
Yeah.
Great. Real privilege to hear sort of the backstory there, because it was wonderful to see Joan and her team getting such great scores. But I think we can all agree there's a mindset there of remembering that, if you want someone to do something, you've got to sort of speak to them in that personal one-on-one way. You've got to remember that behind every data point, there are people who are building that data point. There's emotions that come into play. There's a whole range of things that happen. But I think grounding it within that, we are looking to interact with people in both a rational and an emotional way is so important. I think it's really great as well that, as you said, a tactical level, Joan, and a sort of everyday business level, you can sort of go back to senior leadership team, budget holders, with beyond just the clicks, in terms of, we know what we're seeing in terms of the standard metrics, but we don't necessarily know some more of those kind of emotional engagement metrics that are happening as well. And that's what we're trying to sort of bring in through SAFE Index to do that. So I'm just going to finish with another couple of bits on this. I think a very simple phrase that we always use is, and I'm sure this won't be new news to a lot of you, but if we want people to do something, we have to be noticed, and it's the head that notices, but we have to engage with the heart, and it's the heart that responds. And so a comms journey in lots of ways has to do both of those. It has to be noticed, but that's on its own is not going to get people to respond. There has to be that emotional engagement. But measuring that kind of emotional engagement is quite hard. What we think we're going to do and what we actually do can be quite different. So what we've really tried to build in are a range of measures, and you can see them on the screen here. They're around emotional engagement. And I think you can see a couple of really practical points developing here. One, you can see, which was great news for Starlight, the caring was their top measure, and we know that that's kind of inbuilt into the brand, and it's the mindset that of make me care that the team work to. But you can also see that actually Starlight scores were quite driven by caring and useful. And Charity 2, there's quite a range of emotions in there. Charity 3 actually was very different in terms of sort of caring and useful being at the top there as well. So we start to build up a sort of bit of a picture about different causes, different sectors, different brands, how these emotional triggers are working. And I think it's that link between those emotional triggers and wanting to do something that are really, really important, and that Safe Index is starting to deliver on. A lot of brands will have these attributes as part of their vision, their mission, what their brand's designed to do. So it's a way of measuring those as well. There's a lot of different. There's no blueprint to say you need this score and this score to be successful, because your history, your sector, there's a lot comes into play there about that emotional takeout. But I think, as Joan's alluding to as well, you've got to remember that actually it's how we're making those people feel, both in terms of what we're saying to them and their experience as well of actually engaging with us.
Having a high score is important, I think, on from an emotional point of view, at least on one of the emotions. So yeah, that's good to see. Starlight have such a high score across that cohort.
And then just finally here, we use this scale for trying to get a view as to how much future engagement potential there is. And you can see there again that Starlight have got really good, strong scores on that 9 and 10 score, which is probably the main one where you really want to be. And if anyone's familiar with the Net Promoter Score way of taking away the sort of the detractor scores from the top score, comes with a specific numbers. But I think that although they didn't quite get the highest score, I think that we could see that compared to others, they know where they are. They know potentially where the headroom is. They're quite close. And again, I think that gives confidence in that decision making. And when it comes to thinking about business cases and requesting for money, etc., it can actually now refer to saying, well, these are kind of where potential kind of leaders are in particular areas as well. So I think there's huge challenges that we face as fundraisers, and understanding how that connection is between their experience and their future intention is just kind of really important, and a key measure, I think, to start reporting back on a regular basis, to build confidence in doing that what you're doing is working. Doesn't always work, but if you then got some visibility about the areas of your weaknesses, and that can help start to kind of inform your decisions and your strategy going forward. I think just some key takeaways, which I think you're going to cover, aren't you, Joan, in terms of these next couple of slides about how it's helped you.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that, I think the SAFE Index has really helped us kind of move beyond the usual metrics, obviously, from a much more transactional metrics to much more deeper, looking at the motivations, looking at the emotional engagement, and giving us a benchmark to kind of be able to measure how we're going to be doing, moving forward. So that's really useful. And also, like I said before, proving that emotion leads to deeper support is really helpful for us to be able to make this argument internally, particularly. And then just, all of the actionable results that I've mentioned earlier, the gaps and the headroom have been really, really useful for us in terms of looking at, where we've got some gaps, where we can make some improvements, and, gave us some really good insights into that. So it's really good. I think some takeaways for, if you are interested, looking to do better potentially, and these are, things that I'm looking to do as well. So making sure that you are just trying to engage rather than just broadcast to people, and keeping in mind context and purpose of what it is that you're trying to do, and how you're trying to make people feel. I think it's really important just to think about what you're inviting people to do, and how you want them to feel, because it can be really obvious. I think it seems really obvious about what we want people to feel, but actually, if you really think about and dig a little bit deeper, it can be quite complicated as to what it is exactly that you're trying to make them feel, particularly on mundane emails. So are there ways that you can just add a little bit of surprise and delight in your emails and in your comms, that just add a little bit of extra, a little bit of magic into what it is that you're doing? Because I think then, that creates that trust and that engagement that's really important for keeping people on board with what it is that you're doing. And I often just think, would you care? Would you actually answer? When I'm writing for my own self, I think, well, would you actually respond to this? Would you actually do something with this? So whether you ask somebody in your team, or whether you ask, whether you have a panel of people, or whether you can, just sense check your copy with other people, because sometimes if you're not your own target audience, it can be really helpful to just think about how you're making people care, because it's really important to make them care, really. And there, well, this was a quote that I
grabbed this, Joan, didn't I? And said that's got to go in.
And said that it had to be in, but yeah, I'm just all about making people feel something, whether it's crying or bringing joy or delight or making them feel connected. I always just think everything's kind of made up of science and magic, and this is really good. It brings kind of both things together, and it gives us a chance for supporter comms to bring a little bit more magic to the science. So
brilliant.
Thanks, Joan. And I think just to wrap up, it's great to hear that direct story from Joan and her team, and it's really sort of driven just off what we believe are these sort of 8 core areas that all drive satisfaction and future engagement. We are kind of really happy with the way that more and more people are getting involved in Safe Index now, but importantly, because we are passionate about making sure that research and insight just doesn't sit on somebody's inbox or on a shelf somewhere, that it's actionable. It's actual in terms of making kind of better quality decisions, but also in terms of recognizing the great work that does go on with amazing teams like Joan has. So I think we've got some questions coming through which we'll get onto. We've purposely designed Safe Index to be sort of practical and actionable and accessible for charities of all sizes. I think you saw some at the beginning that Stephen showed, but just to sort of help as well, there's an extra promotion for taking part in today's webinar and listening to us. So thank you very much for that. So I think you're going to get these slides. We can get access to that. So thank you for listening. And I think we're going to just have a quick look at some of the questions. I'm not sure how much time we've got, Simon.
Yeah, well, I think I might end up keeping you for the rest of the afternoon, because I've got a few questions to throw at you. But thank you so much for that, guys. That was really interesting, and thank you for being so kind of open with even like the shortcomings in terms of where Starlight fell and things like that. I love the talk around the balance between the heart and head. I think that's really important, and something we forget when we're sat behind a computer, typing it. So I love that you flagged that throughout. And I loved what was it? Just the talk about the stadium. That we're not talking in a stadium, we're not broadcasting, and bringing it back to that one-to-one. So there's some really great insights in there. I'm going to throw some questions at you. I will remind people we got into some like specific questions in the chat box. And I would say you're probably better off booking a free consultation with the Beautiful Insights guys, because every charity is very different. Every setup is different. We've got questions about email platforms and frequency of email and stuff like that. But we'll come to those if we have time. Where I wanted to start is really, I guess, putting on my small charity hat. If you're a Joan, you might describe yourself as not the biggest of charities, but there's people watching this who are maybe one person. And I think I'd love to explore around like how much time can we justify devoting to supporter experience, And Joan, I might come to you in particular because I imagine you have to kind of justify projects like this to your management because it doesn't feel like fundraising. It's not an ask. It's not money necessarily, essentially. So what's your approach to this, and how do you view that?
Well, I think it's foundational, really. Like, support experiences is your bread and butter. If you don't nurture your supporter base, really, what are you doing? Like, you're just going to spend all your money on acquisition. So I think, like I said in the podcast earlier, like, I came from a background of working in publishing and working in loyalty. It was called loyalty then, but it's basic retention, and that's going to save your charity money regardless. It's the cost of keeping people is much cheaper than getting new people in. Obviously you've got to do both, but it's much cheaper and much easier to spend some time actually just nurturing people and understanding who it is that you're trying to engage with, then taking those insights in finding more people that look like them to support, and because it also then helps with acquisition, right? I don't know, does that answer your question?
I mean, I think it does. Like, from a person who's on the ground point of view, I think that's a really fair answer. You're living it, you're seeing it. You've been doing this for some time now, so you can see those results coming in from the beautiful insights, guys. Obviously, part of this benchmarking report is to strengthen the case for supporter experience. So how do you see that with your clients? How do you find that kind of getting the buy-in on this?
Some of the Paul, I can make a point about some of the other charities that have been involved. Those that didn't score, top, for example, are going to have a different perspective, obviously, on the scores. But I mean, I think for others, it's been more about the costs of inaction are becoming more obvious. Not doing something is starting to make its presence felt more so, and showing up in lapse rates or retention rates and those kind of measures, and also around the kind of the legacy space and the kind of the cost of inaction in taking someone through the legacy pipeline, and the need for a super compelling supporter experience, particularly for those, seems to be looming more large in some of the clients that we've worked with on this project.
Yeah, fair. Paul, anything to add on that?
Yeah, it's the sort of the roots and part of the inspiration actually of Safe Index were a very small local charity, and the person there was pretty much did most things from kind of email comms, actually developing messaging, etc. Even I think kind of sort of answering the phones to queries, and they had a sort of a view that I do want to make sure I feel it's my I'm not doing my job properly if I don't know if my supporters are really engaging, if they're satisfied, if we're doing an okay job. Of course we can look at sort of income, that sort of thing. And they had a set of questions that they wanted to ask to their relatively modest supporter base. And I looked at that and compared it to the sort of questions that some of the very big charities we work with also want to ask to their supporter base about satisfaction. And they're very similar. And I think they're very similar for a number of reasons, because actually the people who are giving to a smaller local charity might also be giving to a big, large multinational charity. So there are some common needs there, throughout. And so that's what we sort of had in mind when we designed Safe Index, that it's got to be not sort of down to lowest common denominator, but it's got to be fit for purpose for, as much as anybody, the supporters themselves in the way that they want to engage with charities, or in some cases don't want to engage with charities. Actually, some people's needs are incredibly modest, and their satisfaction levels are what we might think are quite low. But also to make it very accessible and easy for those people who have got a to-do list that gets ever longer, and help to get some of those things crossed off that to-do list.
You mentioned kind of like the local charities, and we had a question there from SG about balancing consistency of language internationally or regionalization. And I think like they're making a point about international communications. but even on a local level. And Paul, you touched on there about personalization of some people want this communication like this and some people, you know, don't want it. I mean, I guess the ideal is every single person has a very one-to-one relationship. But Joan, on a practical level, when you are the digital fundraising, digital marketing team, what's a realistic place for us to start in terms of personalization?
Well, I think that's why I find motivation's the easier place to start, because actually it comes down to what you're trying to make people feel. Because like I said, everyone's got a different way of engaging with those comms, whether you're an email reader or not an email. You know, I've signed up to 1 million emails. I don't read them unless they're from my kid's school. So any email that I actually open has to be really compelling and or really informative, or something that I really want to read. And so my objective is always like, how can you make that something that somebody wants to read? What are you trying to make people read, and think about it from their perspective rather than what you're trying to say to them, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think the communications from school is an interesting one, because I find you get double, because they always send an email and then immediately send a correction email. That just seems to be the way schools
it's a full-time job dealing with your school email. So I think but I think to the point of we at Starlight, we're not an international charity, but I have worked in international organizations, and localization is really important. It's really key to get that, so at least if you're segmenting your audiences in that way, so that you're actually getting localized, that's really important to have. That level of detail, I think, is really, really crucial, I would say.
Yeah, fair. Guys, there's a few questions coming in around the almost like the mechanics behind the surveys and the collection of data. Maybe you could unpack that a bit more. Our friend Max, who also had a bad joke during the webinar about pirates, but he's asked how many orgs take part in the survey, and maybe you could speak to like the kind of size of them and the demographics of them. But I'm also interested in the feedback action, what one of you mentioned, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, said like it's skewed because people who are more engaged are more likely to respond to that feedback, and I've always found trouble getting feedback responses. Could you unpack about a bit about the mechanics of how this is all working behind the scenes?
Yeah. I mean, it's a supporter survey. It's a standard set of questions. Obviously, we can add questions if particular clients want, burning things that we want to add. But we've got our core set of metrics. Currently, the survey takes about 5 minutes to complete, and we provide kind of the data selections for each participant, so that we've got at least a common set of data to compare between the charities. Charities can also create extra segments, and we can create scores for and insights for specific segments. But we want a comparable data set as well. What else was I going to say?
The demographics of people who are taking part.
Yeah. So the chat we've got small charities from Clergy Support Trust, who look after the clergy, retired members of clergy or members of the clergy that are that are struggling, through to Great Ormond Street Hospital and RSPCA and obviously Starlight as well, and some of those others that were on the slide that we showed earlier. I mean, it's obviously one of those projects that the more charities that participate, if you like, the broader range of data is available for comparison. Although the benchmark score, the kind of average score, as it were, is perhaps less likely to change as more charities join, because unless we've got some real outliers, those average scores will probably stay more or less the same. There's obviously value in the comparisons, we think, and there's also value in knowing the score yourself and knowing your own score. Charities can participate whenever they like, and they can dip in and dip out at a time to suit them. It doesn't run on a calendar, if you see what I mean. So it's designed to suit when charities have the kind of capacity to get involved.
Yeah, and I think it's an important point. There's a real usefulness for knowing your own score, but I mean, I'm really grateful even for these kind of benchmark reports that come out, just to,
Yeah.
even if you're not involved, just to kind of get a sense of what's working and what's not.
Yeah. And you can never, just to say, sorry, Simon, you can never obviously, there's no, it's very tricky to measure the supporter experience because we've talked about that in the past, but actually, that you need to combine this sort of data with other data that you're going to have on your supporter experience. So yeah, although we're only ever going to hear from those that respond, that alone is useful, and the comparison to other charities as well.
And there are a couple of questions around it, but really, I mean, we haven't had much time to get into it today, but we talked a bit on the podcast. You guys are still very mindful of the income, and I know you are measuring kind of how this supporter experience changes with the income. And so, I mean, at the end of the day, we're fundraisers, and I think that's one of the things I've really appreciated with my conversations with you is you really acknowledge that. It's like we're not just doing this for the fun of it. It's like we do have our kind of goals to it. So I really appreciate that. I will say to people as we're approaching the end, do take advantage of that booking a free consultation with Beautiful Insights. And, there's no commitment there, but if you decide to get involved with the Safe Index, there is that discount as well. So I think it's a really useful thing for the sector. And I think it's a really useful thing for organizations like Starlight. So I'm really grateful that you've shared the time. As we start to wrap up, I'm going to ask you maybe a tricky question in terms of, if someone is about to undergo, really looking at their supporter experience, whether it's measuring it or whether it's really trying to start actioning things. What do you guys wish you'd known before getting into these kind of projects? What would have been helpful that you maybe were more mindful of at the beginning? And Paul, I'm going to start with you as the founder, because I'm sure you have a lot of regrets in your time. What's a good tip for people who are just really starting to focus on this?
That's a good question. I wish my microphone stopped working now. Give me a bit more time to think of an answer. No, do you know what? I think one of the things that's really important, and you owe it to the people that you are asking the questions to, your supporters, is almost closing the loop. So feeding back to them what you've learned, what you're going to be doing differently. We are very guilty, and especially in the research world, of always asking your supporters, your customers questions. And sometimes they feel they're just sort of giving these answers and what's been done with the information. So I think it's not just sort of thinking, right, we need these stats to help us with our internal discussions and help us make better quality decisions, etc. But going back to sort of, Joan's point around there are all people behind this, making sure at the beginning of the process, you think, we've got to be thinking about what we can feed back to our supporters. So it's that sort of classic line of, you said this, we've listened, we're doing this as a response. And I think you've got to have that in the back of your mind and thinking, we need to be thinking about what we're going to be doing potentially differently to A, justify the investment internally, but B, just to give genuine feedback to our supporters who've taken the time to share their views.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. We've all been guilty of almost just collecting data into this black pit.
Exactly,
and not actually taking action on it. So I think that's a really fair point. Joan, tell me in your short career as an
my short career. I think I would say my takeaway with my learning over time has always been to go back to the audience and start with them, as opposed to what you are trying to say to them. Think about it in the way that they would like to hear that from you, and make it relevant to them. I think, it's the broadcast point, and I think making people feel something is really, really important, especially in, the sea of SAM. And, like there's so much of our corporate jargon is just word salad that doesn't mean anything. Like make it meaningful and make it matter is really important in making people engage with you and stay engaged. So I would say that the broadcast point would be my takeaway.
I love it. Great. And I really appreciate you taking time. I know you're a busy woman. I appreciate you taking time out to talk to us this week. Stephen,
Thanks.
I'll leave it with you. What's your
thoughts?
I
think what I've been guilty of is sort of wanting everything in place before actually making a start, and I think don't do nothing, and don't feel like you have to have this grand plan. I think Joan's advice of starting with the audience and doing what you can and and getting going and building momentum is really good. And I think the other thing I sort of take heart from having been involved in this project and others is things can change. I think these results have shown that there are a range of different levels of supporter experience out there, that some people are at different points in their journey, and that these results show that improvement is possible. So I think I take heart from that.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, guys, I'm going to let you go. But thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much.
Thanks for putting time into that.
Yeah, such a pleasure. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks everyone. Cheers.
All right, my friends, we are starting to wrap up. Let me just pop up the contact details of Beautiful Insights there, just so you have it. Thank you so much for Beautiful Insights and Joan at Starlight for sharing so openly and going through that. I do highly encourage, reach out to them. They've been so good to us and so open with their learnings and failings and everything like that. So the contact details are there. Remember, there's also a button up there if you want to book a free consultation with them. No pressure, and just good to have a chat through how it might apply to you, or even what you can kind of take. And I think the important point that kept coming up was about baby steps. Doing something is better than doing nothing. And so it doesn't have to be to this kind of scale where you're the top scoring organization like Starlight. It's just about starting to make that move and starting to move forward with it. So do get in touch with Beautiful Insights. They've been really helpful to me and really interesting. So I'm grateful for their time. I want to thank you all for being here. Remember, the recording of this will be at the same link for 30 days. After that, members, it will pop into your library. So remember, the Fundraising Everywhere members get ongoing access to everything, access to all of our events, access to the members' workshops, access to one-to-one coaching, access to the team, lots of bonus stuff with the membership. So if you're not already a member, do check out that free trial, which is sitting below the video, and you'll get access to everything, including our upcoming events, things like the Individual Giving Conference. We've got the Trusts and Major Donors Conference, and then we have all of the conferences running throughout the year, as well as webinars like these, which are available on demand in your library, as well as that extra stuff that you get as a member. And I'm so grateful to you members for being part of it. A huge shout out to the members in the chat box. Give me a heck yes, or give me anything in your local dialect, just to let me know the members are in the chat box. But it's been so lovely to hang out with you again. I really take so much from these, where I get to connect with other fundraisers and chat to you in the chat box. We will see you at the next event, but hopefully see you on board with that membership. And do again reach out to Beautiful Insights for further chats, because they that's just been great. It's been really, and let's get them back on next year to see how it compares. Will we? I'm sure supporter experience is going to go through the roof for all of us, because we're also feeling so positive and optimistic. But we're here for you, Fundraising Everywhere, as always. Looking forward to seeing you at the next event. And that's it. Thank you, everyone. Take care.
Hello, everyone. My name's Cam, and I'm the Head of Membership Engagement at Fundraising Everywhere. And welcome to Fundraising Everywhere Membership, the one URL that you need to save for everything fundraising, support, training, learning, and connection, including that little dose of inspiration you might need. So I'm going to give you a little tour of behind the scenes for what you get access to as part of your membership as you join the community here at Fundraising Everywhere. So first of all, we have monthly meetings and workshops that are exclusively for our members, where you can come in with your camera on or off, and we get right into the details of what's going to help you progress in your career or be an even better fundraiser, and how to support you with your well-being. We do this through discussions, practical tools and tips, so you always leave with something really tangible. Often we'll focus in these workshops on you as a human, not just a fundraiser. So we've hosted also sessions on things like how to use Canva, how to write your thank you letters, how to ensure you're managing your mental well-being, and how to prioritize your priorities. So you tell us what's important to you and what you need, and we make that happen. And that's the great thing about being a Fundraising Everywhere member. We really are member-led. So we'd love to hear from you on what you need to ensure that we can provide you with the support and inspiration that you desire. In addition to the member workshops, you also have instant access to everything on demand that we've ever hosted. But don't worry, you can filter by date, by session title, if you happen to know the name of the topic, and also by speaker, if you happen to have a favorite. So if there's something that you already know you're looking for, you can get straight to it. If you ever can't find something on the platform, please do always get in touch so that myself or someone else in the team can direct you to where that content might live on our platform. Or indeed, if it's about something we haven't thought of yet, we can ensure that we incorporate that into our future conferences and events that we host. We have over 700 hours of training sessions, webinars, workshops at Fundraising Everywhere, which is incredible, but can also mean that every time for you, we host a conference or a webinar, if you can't make it on the day, we make sure that you have access to that on demand. It's recorded and added to your on-demand library. However, we also know that 700 hours of content could sound quite overwhelming. So what we've done and what we found super helpful for our members is we've bundled together some of our top sessions and some of our most watched sessions so that you can watch these all together. And it's a really, really great starting place when you join membership. This means you can get started straight away on an area of fundraising that is specific to you. You can watch the sessions and you can get comfortable with how it all works. And then you can go off and explore everything else on the platform. And on that note of exploring everything else on the platform, you are automatically registered for all future conferences and events that we do at no extra charge as part of your membership. Even if we add new ones, which we'll continue to do in 2025 and beyond, you can always find the details of our upcoming events just below in your members area. Or you can head to the top right-hand part of the website and you can find out about the events that are happening in the future. If you look at the left-hand side of your screen, you'll see that there's also some support here. There's some support to help you get connected with each other, because we believe that community and peer support are incredibly important. So we have a LinkedIn community where you can ask questions, get your answers, or contribute to others' questions. And you can also book in here a 30-minute coaching call where you can tell us your problem, your challenge, or indeed your opportunity. And either myself or someone from the team will be able to get in touch. If it's a question that we can't answer, we've launched our member matchmaking service, which will partner you up with another member in our community who'll be able to support you. On that note, you'll also see just below, you have access to all of our members only on-demand content. So this includes our bespoke courses and programs. So here you'll see the first one is our Fresh to the Sector module. The Fresh to the Sector training program has been specifically curated for new people to the sector or to an organization. And it's all about teaching the core fundraising fundamentals. We also have our Confident Charity Leaders program, and this has been pulled together to support all existing and future leaders. It's curated of all exclusive, newly recorded content that will take you through the fundamentals of leadership training. The great thing that's in addition to our Confident Leadership program is that you can book a one-to-one coaching call with one of our expert leadership coaches, and Fundraising Everywhere will be able to pay for that coaching call that you receive as part of your membership. Fantastic. The last course that we have available, as you can see here, is the Digital Learning Skills course, which we partnered up together with Just Giving to be able to provide to up your digital skills. All of our training and bespoke programs also allow you to be able to download a certificate at the end once you've completed the module. It's a really great way, I think, to show that recognition and acknowledge that you've been on that journey and picked up all of those useful learning tools and tips that you can share with people in your organization. Last but not least, for our organizational members, you also get, on top of everything that we've just spoken about, your own learning and engagement account manager. And that's me. So what I'll do is I'll support you every single month to give you an update on how your team are doing, who your top users are, what their top sessions are that they've watched, and how they're engaging with the platform. And who within your organization is accessing different types of content that might be really useful insight to ensure that you're supporting your team to reach their goals. So I work with you to find out what it is that you and your team need, and I'll always ensure that we feed that into future conferences and events. Right, I think I mentioned this before, but I'll say it again. Once you're in with Fundraising Everywhere membership, you never have to pay for anything else. You don't have to pay for any extra training, even if we do something in real life. All you have to ensure is that you're utilizing the platform in the way that's best for you. Everyone in your charity with an email address will then get access to all of this content as well. So if this is sounding like something that's for you, please do get in touch and email me at cam@fundraisingeverywhere.com. I'd love you to become a member and talk to you more about the benefits and how we can support you to achieve your goals. I look forward to you hopefully joining our amazing community very, very soon.